if they're doing it from their phone. So
well, if it doesn't work, I can push it to next Thursday if you want.
well, she said we just do a new feed. Oh, we are there. Okay. You're on, Matt.
All right, just got started here. I think we're all set with our streaming, and just wanted to make a couple introductions, and then we can get into our financial literacy session number 3. So my name is Matt Potter. I'm one of the trustees on the BCE Endowment, here with Ray Kruk and Cindy Wright, who will be helping with this presentation. And I will start sharing some slides here so we can dive right into it. So the financial literacy for middle schoolers is brought to you by the BCE Endowment Fund. And I'd like to just talk just for a minute about the Endowment Fund. Let me start that over. You know what, Ray, I might need you to drive here.
Okay.
Let's try this one more time.
Is it not working?
Just one more second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The BCE Endowment Fund is a permanent self-sustaining fund. And you may all be familiar with the BCE annual campaign, where money is raised each year and spent each year to fund various programs, teacher development, PE and music classes, et cetera. That's all very important to us in the BCE. What we're doing with the endowment is raising an additional amount that is sort of like a savings account that will raise. It'll be its own fund that continues forever. It will make earnings on its savings, and it'll support the BCE grant that happens every year. That can happen when the annual campaign falls short, or if there's additional goals that we're setting that we want to fund with additional amounts that come from the endowment. Now, this model got us to thinking about how, like, we want to be responsible with saving money, raising money and saving money for the BCE. We also wanted to help our students learn more about it, because financial literacy is something that has a lot of impacts, and I'll get into more details about that. It's something that the California curriculum does not include. It's recommended or encouraged by those who set the curriculum for California, but there's no requirement. And that's a little sad to hear about us compared to other states, because California is so strong in many aspects. But that's why we thought it'd be a great reason to have this financial literacy session. So let's just talk about financial literacy as the definition, and you can read that definition there in front of you. But I'll just talk about the most important parts, which are about making informed decisions about financial planning, wealth accumulation, etc. And the 3 big components of financial literacy are knowledge and understanding, behavior, and attitudes and confidence. We're providing information through these sessions that can give you that knowledge and understanding. Hopefully that will change your behavior and make you think a little differently anytime something that's finance related comes up in your life. And you can have confidence when you're addressing that. We have information about some surveys that were taken, and really they illustrate the need for financial literacy. When they talked to a certain group of people, they found that when they talked about spending, 20% of those people said they spend more than they earn. And that's just, it's not responsible behavior, but there's something more to that, and it has to do with understanding how things work. 27% said that they don't save any portion of their income for retirement. 59% said they don't set aside any money for college. And you can certainly finish this session tonight and check with your parents and make sure they're setting some money aside for college, because it'll make things a lot easier when you get there. And then speaking of college, the level of education really has a lot to do with people's sense of financial security. When they asked people if they thought they could make ends meet, the people who only had high school or lower level of education, only 39% of those people felt that they could make ends meet. But people that had a college degree or more, of those people, 60% felt that they could make ends meet. And that's an important thing to focus on as we're trying to make an impact here. So Ray's going to talk about what our agenda is, and then we can continue along learning about our topic tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So my name is Ray again. How are you? I'm a BCE parent and happy to be with you tonight. Tonight's session, we're going to cover on picking up some themes from our last seminar series, which was around needs and wants. We'll cover that a little bit briefly tonight. We'll talk about how you can get your first job and how you can make money and some of the choices you can make there. How to develop your network, your personal network or connections you have to family and friends, and how that can help you get a job or get your next job. How to get started in creating your own job or getting a job with an employer. We'll touch on volunteering, and then finally we'll touch on paychecks and taxes. Lovely, lovely subject, but necessary when you start earning money. You have the concept of getting paid in some form and then paying taxes on that too. So we'll touch on that a little bit so you have a better understanding of those pieces. And then we'll have Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions, if the chat is available to you, please do drop it in the chat line. In the chat line, and we'll see if Cindy can kind of give us a cue. If there are any questions, we can address them towards the end. Also, later on in the session, we're going to do a little fun quiz with famous people and their first job. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil handy then you'll be ready to do some quick jot notes for that quiz later on in the session. So just a heads up about that. We'll also have some polls, 2 survey questions coming up in the presentation. We'd love your feedback on it. The YouTube channel, if any of you are live streaming right now, the YouTube channel will have the ability for you to answer the polls that are going to emerge at certain points in the presentation. And we'll take a minute for you guys to, kind of respond there on those survey questions. And we'd love your feedback and love your involvement in the presentation tonight. So let's starting off with needs and wants. So, needs are, we talked about it in the context of the last session around, what you need to earn money for, like having a roof over your head, having, food and clothing and the basics in life. Those are typically needs. And wants are things like games and, candy and other fun things, spending money on fun things. I wanted to kind of outline here that in the context of needs and wants, once you get older, and now many of you are middle schoolers, I know many of you are, somewhere in the middle school area. Some might be touching on getting into high school fairly soon. Your kind of needs are shifting now, right? So some of the things that are, basic necessities now become really even more important. And some of the wants that we would consider normally a want are almost now becoming a need for you, like having the right clothes. Not just about having any clothes, it's having the right clothes, or it's about being able to go out with your friends and having money to spend time with your friends on the Ave or at the mall or wherever. And then being able to buy games, for example, for your gaming console. So these are starting to become your needs as a young person, as a young adult growing up. And conversely, though, your parents are looking for you to grow up and take more responsibility for yourself and learn how to take care of yourself, learn the value of a dollar and learn how to earn your own money. and you'll get to see how hard it is that your parents have to work to earn money, and they'd certainly love for you to have that appreciation as well. So all of this really serves, a job kind of serves both sides of this, right? A job gives you the ability to earn money for what you now need, but also helps you build confidence and responsibility and follow through commitment to people who you're taking money from and delivering your labor back to. So that's kind of the fun thing about a job, is it kind of serves both these needs and wants. So our first question for you tonight for the survey is just, what kind of job do you currently have? And do you have a job currently? The kind of choices we gave for you of like, do you have a job? Do you not have one? Are you considering it? Or are you doing any kind of volunteer work now, which could be a job? Maybe it's not a paid job, but some volunteer jobs do involve some money, and some lead to paying jobs later on by virtue of the skill you learn in volunteering. So just go ahead and answer the poll questions there in the YouTube channel, and we'll check in on those answers in a little bit.
We'll give Cindy some time to see what sort of results we get here.
Yeah, while we wait for him to come in, we're getting some votes in now. Matt, do you want to tell us what your first job was?
There you go.
How old you were?
I guess I made some money picking up and cleaning after there was bingo that went on in like a community hall, and we would get paid cash for showing up on a Thursday night and working a couple hours to set up tables and then clean them up later. And that was pretty easy and fun, and
Nice.
little hard work too, but it was good.
All right, I think Angela's going to close the poll and share the results here. Ray, what was your first job?
Mine was working for what worked out to be less than minimum wage in a fried chicken restaurant, being basically a short order cook and fried cook. I used to burn my forearms from laying raw chicken into a vat of boiling fat or boiling oil. So that was my first job, which was pretty gross. Hard work, long hours, lots of fun.
So our participants, 66% do not have a job yet. 16% are considering getting one, 11% have one, and 5% are already volunteers, which I love to hear.
That's fantastic. Awesome.
Great. So let's move on and just talk about reasons to get a job. I've got several reasons for you, and you may hear a lot from your parents. The first that people talk about obviously is money. And yes, it's great to earn some spending money. When you earn that money, you also learn about how to spend and save it. But behind that, there's a ton of other reasons to get a job. Experience is something where you're learning or expanding skills that you have. You're being assigned responsibility, and responsibility when you're talking about a job means someone's letting you make your own decisions that are impactful. That's a big deal, and it really builds upon itself. And any opportunities that you're looking for in the future of your next job will probably require prior experience. So having experience, showing that you've held responsibility, it's an important thing, and it really builds on itself. Time management is another great reason, where you're just learning about knowing your availability to do things and knowing how to prioritize your time, which is really when you're figuring out what to say yes or no to. And you also figure out how long it takes to do something. So you can figure out, oh, I need an hour to do my homework, and then I can go play with my friends. Or I need to commit 6 hours a week to this job that I'd like to get. Where am I going to find those 6 hours? Is it on the weekends? Am I more available then, or is it weekdays? A couple of the reasons to get a job are just confidence. You learn how to interact with people that you don't know. Jobs are unique in that way, because you think about who you normally interact with throughout the day. You already know everybody. And when you're meeting different people, then you're learning more about them, and you're getting more confident in doing that. Those are called interpersonal skills. And you also make yourself more dynamic and interesting. You're getting to tell your own story, and you're having a deeper story to tell. You also make a lot of connections, and I'm going to talk in detail about that, but connections really help you learn other people's perspectives, they help you expand your network, which I'll discuss, and it really creates new opportunities for you. So let's look at that with your connections. You think about you and maybe the age that you are, and as you're growing older, you really start with some parts here with just knowing people socially, and that's your family and friends and relatives. You might know people around the world through social media, and those are social areas. Then you think about your community, and that could be school or classmates or a church you belong to. That's your community, and as you get older, you might be more affiliated with that community, and then you start joining organizations, which could be school clubs or athletic teams, or just going to events with people. That really builds connections for you in further areas. And then professionally, and this, when I say professionally, it's more like in the workplace. You have people that are your employer or coworkers, people that you used to work for, or even just across a certain industry that you focus on. These are all sorts of connections that you have, and they're really going to help you to succeed in life and to really enjoy things. You build relationships with all of these people, and when you are networking or really using these connections, the best way to do this is think about giving value to someone, because ultimately you're going to look for something in return, or you're going to hope for something that you can get. And if you've already given something to somebody, then it's easy to get that favor back. If I told Ray that I knew someone that worked in the same line of work that he does, he might be interested in that, and it might be a new connection for him. And then if I asked him if he could get my son a job at a successful company, then he might be more likely to get my son a job there. So that's a quick example. But you want to stay in touch with people to really foster these relationships. And I think you'll be surprised at how many people you interact with. And if you don't think it's a lot of people, then now you have kind of a view of all the different ways you can make these connections. The last thing, as you're fostering these relationships, you always want to thank people, recognize them for helping you. Ray, do you want to talk about options to make money?
Yeah, so we've laid out some ideas here on how you can make money, starting with where many people start is with sort of odd jobs. There's no real age requirement here, so there's no legal working age requirement typically for doing things like extra chores around the house for your parents or your grandparents or some other family member. Certainly things like dog walking, babysitting, helping a neighbor with their chores, either in their yard or elsewhere. Those are things you can certainly pick up on your own and can do pretty easily without a whole lot of headache around getting paperwork done and stuff like that. And it can oftentimes be an easy way for you to break into getting used to defining your own hours and signing up for a commitment to someone else. Creating your own, we'll go into some more detail around this, but a lot of people, younger people certainly are trying this out now, is doing things like creating your own job, selling things on digital marketplaces like eBay and Facebook Marketplace and others, or doing things like car washing and detailing type jobs. Those are examples of things where you kind of create a bit of a service around what you're doing, or doing long-term dog sitting. I see that around Burlingame and the peninsula quite a bit, people opening up for long-term dog care that are younger kids. And then on the employer side, certainly there's some options. If you're below the legal age, which is 16 years old in the state of California, you can do things like soccer refereeing. We'll get into some refereeing examples in some interviews that are coming up in this session. Baseball umpiring, event setup and cleanup. I think Matt mentioned he did that too when he was younger. And then you have when you get over 16, now you're in high school, of course, a little bit older, you can certainly take on a more formal, proper job that's offered by a local employer, like a restaurant chain, or, through an employment agency, they can help place you at a company. But you can do things like tutoring. So some of our community members in Burlingame work for our sponsor, Groupology, helping tutor and mentor other kids. And that's great. You have sort of kids similar age to other kids, helping tutor them in other subjects. So that's really great. And then working at the local Parks and Rec, there are opportunities there to help organize and run those events. Next slide.
Thanks, Ray. So let's learn from a couple neighbors of mine down the street who have started their first jobs umpiring baseball. And I'm going to play these videos. They're very quiet, so I'm going to talk a little more quietly and have you turn your volume up so you can hear them. The first is Rowan. He is 14, but he started umpiring baseball when he was 11.
Rowan, what did you do in your baseball umpiring job?
What I do is I go out and I judge a kid's baseball game. I like make the calls and tell them like if they're out or safe and hold balls and strikes for baseball.
Okay, cool. How did you get the job?
I had to go through a training through the rec, and they taught me like where to go for like when there's different people on different bases, and like where would be a strike for different age groups and stuff.
Okay. And what do you like about the job?
I like being able to get money so I can buy things for myself.
All right, great. What's something you learned or didn't realize until you had the job?
I learned how to deal with aggressive dads who don't like my calls and calm them down.
Okay.
Well, thanks to Rowan for that. So, that really covers a lot of what I had mentioned earlier about, learning new skills, and that he did that through his training, and then also learning to interact with people. He gets to interact with very eager dads who want to get safe calls or out calls or what have you. But he also got paid money, and this started back when he was 11, as I mentioned. Now his brother Luca started when he was 10. Luca's 12 now. Let's hear from him.
All right, what is your job?
My job is umpiring baseball games,
Okay. Who do you do that job for?
BYBA baseball.
Okay. What is the most challenging part of your job?
Staying focused during a game that could be lasting over 2 hours.
Okay. And what advice would you give to someone about your age who's thinking about getting a job?
I mean, it's worth the time, it's worth the hard work because you earn money. It gives back to you.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay, so those are great things to learn from these guys, and great to know that they started at ages that some of you watching this presentation are. And it's not just the Burlingame Baseball League. There's AYSO. There's all kinds of sports leagues that need referees. You might start as a volunteer, but you build your skill base doing that, and then you can get paid after that. So great opportunities there at a pretty young age. Ray, why don't you talk about odd jobs? And you can turn your volume down now if we're getting loud.
Yeah, and I have kind of a loud voice, so you can adjust your volume back down. So yeah, in creating your own job, I think it's some important considerations to think about. Number one, what time can you really commit to, especially doing odd jobs for either a neighbor or a family member or someone in your neighborhood? That's really important. Giving yourself a brand, so identifying yourself as someone who's offering a certain service. Make sure you can tell your own story, what you're willing to offer, be clear in your communication about what you can offer. Next, you might want to think about a little bit of a mini business plan. Doesn't have to be too big a deal, but think about how much money you can make. If you have to buy things to get that job done. So for example, if you do dog walking, for example, you might have to buy an extra leash or have bags with you, that you might have to buy to support you doing that job, or other things you might need to make you successful doing that job. So think about those things, how much you're going to earn perhaps potentially, how much you have supplies or things you have to buy to get that money, and then what you're left with afterwards. So that's called business plan, figuring out what your expenses are and how much money you can make, and where your target customers are. When you're doing promotion and communication, be careful that you are a minor. So don't use, I know many of you have cell phones, don't use your personal phone number. Maybe use a parent's number if you do want to post something publicly on a social media site or a flyer in the neighborhood. Keep your identity masked. Don't tell people your cell phone number or a personal email address. Maybe use a parent's email address or other ways of, connecting with people that don't involve giving out your personal information. And finally, follow through on your commitment. It's really important when you do decide to take money from somebody and offer a service in return that you follow through on that commitment, that you're reliable, that they can count on you to do your best job for them. Be clear in what it is you are going to do for them. And, if you do agree on something with somebody and you feel like you maybe overstated what you can do, or you overreached in what you think you can deliver, then be honest about that and be clear in your communication with whoever you're interacting with, so they understand and they do something. Big parents call it setting expectations, right? Set expectations about what it is you can do and what you're going to follow through on. And that's the most important thing. And when you're dealing with someone who's going to give you money for a service. So in creating your own job, I thought, we'll go to the next slide. We'll do an interview here with my daughter, Madeline, who, hopefully she can come into view here. There we go. Come on in a little closer. There we go. There we go. Perfect. You want to lean forward a little bit?
Oh,
Sorry.
it's like not getting it.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, how are you? So this is Madeline, my daughter. And Madeline is now how old?
16.
Okay, perfect. And Madeline has an online merchant account where she sells stuff online. So do you want to tell us, first of all, what got you started in selling online?
Money was my biggest motivator, especially as a teenager. Because I did it before I was 16 too, when you can't really get a real job yet. And some of my friends were selling clothes, so it motivated me to sell my own. And yeah.
What's the thing you like most about online selling?
I love the fact that I can make money from clothes that I don't want anymore. And packaging clothes and shipping and the whole process is fun, and like just owning your own shop, I guess.
Cool. What's the thing you've learned? What's some of the big lessons or takeaways from having your own online store?
It took a lot of patience. Like it took me like 5 months since I started making money, like from when I started, and dealing with people online, learning how to like talk certain ways, respond, be nice. And yeah.
Great. Would you recommend it to other kids?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thanks, Madeline.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you, Madeline. All right, let's get back to our slides.
So some tips from Madeline on being an online merchant, just to cover that in a little more detail, because I think a lot of young kids are going out. Some of the marketplaces where most people are most popular selling items are Facebook Marketplace, places like Poshmark and Depop, Mercari, eBay, Etsy. Some of the pro tips though that Madeline has given me, and I've learned from other families that have kids selling things online. Creating your own inventory, figuring out what you maybe have too much of. My son Lucas also sells Legos online. All the excess Legos he had when he was younger, he's able to sell for actually in many cases some good money. So think about how you create enough stuff to sell to begin with, whether it's clothes or items at home or things you can resell. How to price them is often a challenge. A lot of young people don't know how to price something. The basic rule of thumb is take whatever that item is, what it would cost new, and a used price, would it be anywhere between 10% up to maybe 50% of the cost of that item new. So if something costs $20 new, if you sell it used and it's in really good shape, maybe you want to sell it for $10, roughly half the cost of new, or If it's not so great, maybe down, around $2 to $3 to $5. So it's something as a guideline for you, and check out what other people are selling the same item for online. Collecting money, oftentimes, in fact, almost every single time, any one of these platforms that I mentioned up above require you to have either a bank account or a PayPal account or a credit card associated with the profile in your account, which means you'll need your parents involved with that and helping use their identities and their accounts to do that. So just be aware that you have to do that. You'll need an email address. Again, like before with creating your own odd job and communicating, probably use a parent's email for communication, or have it linked through there. Be careful to check for commissions. So there's big differences in terms of how much each platform will charge you per transaction, per item that you sell. Some are very expensive, some are a lot cheaper. So just look, read the fine print and look at what it's actually going to cost you to sell an item on that platform. When you're shipping products out to people, package it securely, take time to label it properly, have clean, straightforward, clear, legible printing on your labels. I know it sounds basic, but some people don't do that very well, and it causes it to be sent back. Also, keep the packaging that you get from your parents' Amazon shipments or other shipments or shipments that you have to get back. Keep that packaging so you can reuse it again and not have more landfill waste. And it's also lower cost for you. Be responsive to buyers. You heard Madeline say that earlier, that when buyers ask you about an item you have for sale, be really responsive in getting back to them quickly with an answer, and stay on top of your account that way. Be clear in terms of communicating what it is you're selling, as well as the condition of it, and when you do actually ship it out, if they have questions about arrival and when will it get here, be really clear about when it was shipped and when they can expect to receive it. Being clear about those communications is really, really important when selling online, so you avoid headaches. Stay active in your account. So keep photography, photos of the items and description of the items, keep it all really current and up to date, and change it out so that it feels like, because the marketplaces monitor how active you are on their platform. So adding items in, deleting some, changing up the descriptions helps keep your profile fresh and your account fresh. And finally, as Madeline, I think, said, one of the biggest learnings she had, and I think a lot of kids have the same learning, is that be very patient. It could take up to several weeks or even months for you to sell your first item. You may not sell it for a huge amount of money. So you have to get started somewhere and keep building and working on your reputation online for being able to sell and buy and sell quite actively. And that'll help you be successful. So our second survey question that you guys can jump over into, those of you on YouTube can jump into our YouTube poll. Our second question is, based on what you've heard tonight so far, what would you consider taking on as your next job potentially? Would you create your own job? Would you want to get a job with an employer? Would you want to do odd jobs or volunteering? So jump into the poll there and give us your feedback as to what you're thinking might be your next job.
All right. Well, those come in. I guess I have to tell you where my first job was. So I started with babysitting in middle school, and I attended BIS and BHS, and I worked at Washington, or I volunteered at Washington Elementary School in their kindergarten classroom. And that helped me get my first paying job, which was leading arts and crafts at a summer camp. So,
wow, cool.
Volunteer jobs end up being helpful.
That's right. That's awesome.
All right. So let's see. We have 58% are going to create their own, 25% are going to volunteer, and 16% are going to go to an employer or organization.
Cool. That's great.
Interesting results.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, well, let's continue on here. So Ray, why don't you tell us about famous people and their first job?
So we thought this is where you can pull out your paper and your pen or pencil just to make it easy. We're going to show you a lineup of some famous people and then see if you can match it to their first job they had. So let's take the people on the left. We got Nicki Minaj, Harry Styles, Brad Pitt, Cardi B, Beyonce, President Obama, and Jennifer Aniston. So why don't you just take a moment and take the jobs on the right and see if you can match it up to the names on the left. And so you can just do a number and letter combo. We'll give you maybe 1 minute to do that, and we'll come back in the next slide and give you the answers to that. And you can compare how well you did, see how close you were.
I had a great part-time job in high school, if you want to hear about that while we're waiting.
Sure.
I worked for a flower stand. It was owned by brothers Papadopoulos. It was a Greek family that had several flower stands. The one I worked with, you might have seen, it's right at the top of 19th Avenue in San Francisco, right at the very top of the hill. And there's a lot of cars that drive by there. So there was a lot of customers that they had. But despite some cold days in San Francisco, especially in the summertime, it was still great to get paid the cash. And then I got to, my friend and I would always I get to work with my friend. So we spent the whole day just chatting and having fun. And we got to grab any bunch of flowers that we wanted to at the end of our shift. And so if there wasn't a girl or friend to hand them out to, I'd certainly bring them home and give them to my mom, and she was overjoyed. So everybody was happy after the hard day of work at the flower stand.
Nice, nice. Did you get lots of cuts from the roses, like on your fingers and stuff, your hands?
I did, and I stapled my fingers together one time. But other than that, I couldn't feel it because it was kind of cold. But it's fun stories to have. And that friend that I worked with, we always joke about the flower stand, even though it's been years and years.
Yeah.
All right, we ready to look at the mixes here?
All right, so let's see how we did. If you want to go down to the next slide, we'll see how the answers pop up here. So Nicki Minaj, she was the server at Red Lobster. Harry Styles worked in a bakery. Brad Pitt was a furniture mover, worked for a furniture moving company. Cardi B was a cashier at a grocery store, I believe. Beyonce worked in her mom's hair salon. That was her first job. President Obama scooped ice cream at Baskin-Robbins in Hawaii when he was a teenager. And finally, Jennifer Aniston was a bike messenger, I believe in the New York area. It was her first job. I think it was New York or New Jersey area. First job. And she said it was still to this day the hardest job she ever had. So I'm sure quite physically demanding. So how did you guys do? Hopefully you guys did well. Next thing we want to talk about a little bit here is volunteering. So as many of you said in your poll response, you are currently volunteering, or even now as a result of this session, maybe considering volunteering. So as Matt said, it's great for building your network and great for building skills and experience that lead to a job later on. Also in the case of Cindy's examples, volunteering can lead to meeting people that can help get you your next job. Some great volunteering options here in San Mateo County, here in Burlingame, are working for the local library. That's one good place. Cindy had another great example, being a helper inside kindergarten at Washington School. Some of the public schools occasionally offer opportunities for middle schoolers to help in the elementary school level. Coaching younger kids in whether it's AYSO or baseball leagues or other leagues, softball leagues, that's a great way to kind of get started and help build skills and character and your network. The local animal shelter here on Rollins Road, they do have volunteers for dog walking and dog and animal care. It's a great option. The food bank, running a food drive certainly is good. And in San Mateo County, at the end, I just put some links here. This presentation will be available later on if you want to check back on these links. But there is a portal called volunteermatch.org. And there's a specific section of it for San Mateo County that is just a huge directory of all kinds of volunteer jobs and ways in which you can give back to your community in small ways and big ways, small time commitments, big time commitments. It's a really great resource to go find and do things together as a family or you as an individual. You can also volunteer for the county parks system. That's a great job when you turn, I believe they are taking them as young as 15 now. So that's something you might want to think about. And finally, the Sheriff's Department for the county also has search and rescue and police, volunteer starting at what they call the Explorer program. Starting as young as 14, they'll take you in and they'll teach you skills. And the search and rescue side, because I do it myself, on an adult level, you can learn skills around survival, camping, first aid, helping others. It's some valuable skills you can learn and meet a lot of great people. So lots of options here in the Bay Area, lots of options in the county and in Burlingame too.
I talked about your experience making you more interesting. That's something I didn't know about Deputy Ray, and it's fun to find out.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a couple more things here. One is just the paychecks and taxes. If you have a job, you have to think about how you'll get paid. And my daughter was a babysitter. She learned an important lesson because she thought she would get paid a certain amount, but it turned out by the end of the night, it was a little different. They didn't quite agree, was it hourly or by the project or what? So it's good to, when you go into things, make sure you know how you're going to get paid or how much it will be. And when I say by the project, it just means once you're done doing something, then you get a certain amount that's a lump sum. It's also good to know if the wages are reported to the IRS. And if that happens, then you'll probably get a pay stub. I have an example of a pay stub on the right. And what it does is computes your gross wages, which is if you get paid by the hours, the total hours times the rate. Then there's deductions for payroll taxes, for income taxes, et cetera. And that gets you to your net earnings or your net pay. And that's what the actual check will be paid for. I have to mention that if you're paid hourly and you're 16 or older, you will get the minimum wage. You will at least get the minimum wage. And in San Mateo County, that's going to be $16.20 an hour starting in January. That's a pretty good amount to get paid. So that's great. And last thing here is what to do with the paycheck. I heard a great story today about Ricky Henderson, who was a Hall of Fame baseball player, played for the Oakland A's. He did not have financial literacy, and that was revealed when he was a great baseball star. He got his first paycheck, and the A's organization was wondering what happened because after 3 weeks, he hadn't cashed the check. You have to deposit the check to a checking account. So someone went to his house to visit him and see what was going on. He had framed it on the wall. He had no idea that he had to actually take it to the bank and deposit it. So make sure you know what to do with the paycheck, and also have a plan in terms of whether you're going to save or spend certain portions of that check. If there are taxes that are withheld, then you'll learn about filing your annual income tax return. You might have taxes due, or some of your tax withholdings might be refunded back to you. So that's another important thing to learn. One last thing is work permits are required for anyone under the age of 18 who's working for an employer. The idea is just that you really should be attending school first and foremost, but if you do want to work a certain amount of hours, your school needs to know where you're working and that you're working. And so there's a work permit that they will keep on file for you. And it just helps everyone know that school is a priority, but also they can make sure that you're spending some of your time working, and that school knows that too. If you have an odd job, that's excluded from this, so you don't have to worry about that.
And Matt, just on that work permit question, so because it did come up earlier, so will the employer provide the permit, or do you have to go to school, like let's say BIS or BHS, to go get this permit?
It's best to go to your school and ask about it, and they should be able to give you some really solid answers. I think everything is always better if you initiate it, because you're learning about the process. Ultimately, the employer is probably responsible for it, but like I said, you should be the one that starts that conversation, and just go to your school because they deal with it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so if anyone wants to submit questions, we're happy to field those now. I think Cindy will need your help to read anything out, and then Ray and I can flip a coin and see who might have the best answer.
All right, we'll see if they come in. I have a question, and talking about needs, kids' needs and moms' wants. I'd like to get rid of some Legos, Ray. Where is your kiddo selling them?
Yeah. So Lucas has sold over $1,000 worth of Legos this summer, this past summer. He uses Facebook Marketplace primarily. He's also put an ad on Craigslist that worked fairly well, but Facebook Marketplace seemed to be a pretty easy, straightforward place. And if it's the case of Legos, obviously you can sell them by the gross and package them up in nice. They literally take them. You want to get a little cheap scale. They sell Lego, like gross Legos, by the pound. So you want to sell them in 1 or multiple pound increments in a little plastic bag. If you have a whole set, those are far more valuable, of course, the whole sets. So you want to have ideally the original box, the instruction manual, and even be able to somewhat break down the pieces, not completely, but the pieces from the set into some at least 3 or 4 or 5 major bags, so that someone can reassemble it with the instructions pretty easily. And then you get really good money for those whole sets.
Awesome. Well, my son is listening because he said not our Legos in a text to me.
Well, whenever they're ready. It may not be right now. It took a while to let go. There's, some of the sets are really awesome. So,
And don't just sell anyone's Legos. You got to sell your own.
right. To be clear, yeah, don't go around stealing Legos from other kids and then start selling them. No, sell your own if you do.
Tips for interviewing.
Matt, you want to take that? I have an answer there too, but you want to answer that one, Matt?
Sure. I mean, it's a skill, and skills always require practice. So you can practice on anybody you want, any of your family or friends, or just in front of the mirror, but practice interviewing. There's typical questions that people ask in an interview. So you have to be ready for them. And they can be very straightforward questions like, do you have time available for this? Or what is your experience? Or there might be some deeper questions that people use just to get to know you a little better. So they may say something a little deeper, like what's important to you. And so it's good to just have a lot of preparation when you're getting ready for those questions. And the internet can help with typical interview questions, but that's my advice.
Right. Or imagine someone else who works there might be able to tell you what they were asked.
Yeah.
There's your network.
Exactly.
And a big thing too is just even if you're kind of it's fantastic advice that Matt just gave around preparation. I think also just the basics of when you walk into the room, you look the person in the eye, you say hello, shake their hand if that's okay with COVID protocols, or fist and bump, but mainly looking them in the eye when you provide an answer. And when you're done, you look them in the eye again, say, thank you very much for your time. And just the eye contact is just really important, even if your answers are shaky, and you'll be nervous for sure. So that just having the ability to give a clear, straight answer to someone is really, really important. So practice is really good too.
Awesome. All right, this one might get you guys. Don't know if you have the statistic, but how many jobs do kids typically apply to before they get hired? Like, should they just go get one application, fill it out, and call it a day?
Oh, I have some bad stories from my son's friend he filled out an application to work at a fast food restaurant in Burlingame. And whether it's the restaurant's fault or his fault, 3 months had passed and summer was over, and no one had apparently done anything with the application. So I think there's 2 parts to that. You really need to follow up if it's a job that you want, and make sure that you're checking in, but you also need to apply to multiple places. And it's always best when you have options available to you.
Yeah, I would, that's fantastic advice. I think I would just add that most parents I've spoken to with teenage kids that are getting jobs from employers apply to at least 3 jobs, right? At least 3 is good to start with, so that you have some, if all 3 come in, then you have choice, which is great. Or as Matt said, 1 or more. It's also quite common for them to lose the applications, and they're just sloppiness on their side that they just may lose track of it. And if you don't follow up, then at least if they didn't follow up, you might have another option that does come through.
Right.
But having those network connections really helps because you're a little more familiar to someone maybe at the place you're applying. And I think, yeah, that's an important part of it.
Right. All right. We have a question about how do you determine what rate to charge for your services?
Great question. I would say, ask a parent to research a little bit online and ask around. Typically, as you can see, the minimum wage in San Mateo County is $16 an hour. You could use that roughly as a rate or a benchmark. A little bit, maybe if you're doing odd jobs, you might want to be slightly below that per hour, but around that number would be a good estimate. So $15 an hour is kind of normal. 10 might be on the low side per hour, just to give you a baseline. But depending on the job and how many hours it will take to do, you'll have to, I think, propose something and again with your parents' guidance, and then be prepared that the customer that you're trying to offer the service to, whether that's a neighbor, a friend, or your parents or whoever, may actually negotiate with you if they want a job done at a certain fixed price. You might have to think about, negotiating with them and figure out if they offer you one flat dollar amount for a project, what that works out to per hour based on the number of hours it takes for you to figure that out. And you got to think, well, what's the minimum amount I need maybe to get to the financial goal that you have? You may be trying to save money for a specific thing. So just either use the county hourly rate of $16.20 and benchmark against that, close enough to that per hour, or think about how much you want to work for how many hours based on what goal you want to go after.
Yeah, let me mention one thing. There's also there's a fair amount of jobs that provide tips, like serving food or working maybe at a golf club or something like that. And those jobs can be really different. You might get a smaller hourly wage, but you might be eligible to get tips. And our friend's son worked for a moving company and he got lots and lots of tips, which was great. So you have to think about whether there might be the opportunity. And there's also certain personality types that are better at getting those tips, interacting with the customer, making them feel good, because it's more of a connection with the person that sometimes makes the person enjoy giving a tip to you. So think about the type of job and then what by the end of the day you might have the opportunity to make.
Right. And I think also going in on Nextdoor, the other places where you're going to be posting your services and seeing what other people are asking for those services or what people are offering. Mm-hmm. I know that, there's some kids who've gotten a certification for babysitting through the rec center, and they probably could charge a little bit more because they have that experience. So the more you do it, the more you can ask for. But yeah, and that's it for questions today. Right.
Okay, good timing, because Ray's going to wrap it up here.
Yeah, no, great questions. So basically, thank you all for those of you who participated today, to our kids who helped with giving us, their thoughts and reflections on interviews. That was great. Watch for a survey coming from BCE potentially to your inbox after this session, and we'd love your feedback about how this session went and areas or topics you'd like us to cover in a future seminar. That'd be great. Also check out our sort of subpage or page on the BCE Foundation website around financial literacy. You can see links or find links to prior recorded sessions there, as well as the recording for this session. So if you know somebody in your friend network or someone that you think would benefit from hearing this, you can get the recording, I think starting tomorrow, will be available on the website to kind of listen to this link. And then please don't forget to donate if you have the ability to donate, or spread the word about BCE Foundation. The endowment fund has a goal of $2 million. We're about not quite halfway there yet, but we're marching towards that goal really aggressively. We're super excited about our progress there and getting more and more people involved. Any amount of donation is accepted. We would love your support, however small or large you can afford. We would love the support for the endowment, and of course for BCE more broadly as well. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and we'll see you probably again early in the new year with another session on financial literacy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.